I'm Kate Walker, 28, a software engineer. The pen snapped in half between my fingers, black ink bleeding across the birthday card I'd been signing. The sharp crack echoed through my parents' living room like a gunshot, making Mom flinch from her spot on the cream-colored sofa. We used her college fund for Sarah's wedding. Dad's words hung in the air while I stared down at the broken pen, watching the ink pool and spread across the cheerful, "Happy birthday, Mom" message I'd been writing. The metallic taste of shock filled my mouth, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear the neighbor's lawnmower humming its steady rhythm. "Kate." Mom's voice sounded small, uncertain. "Say something." I set the ruined card on the coffee table, the ink still spreading like a dark stain across the white paper. My hands were surprisingly steady as I wiped the black smudges from my fingers with a tissue, though I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs. "How much?" The question came out calm, controlled. Inside, I was screaming. Dad shifted in his leather recliner, the old chair creaking under his weight. "All of it. 43,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. I could smell Mom's vanilla candles burning on the mantel, their sweet scent now cloying and overwhelming. The familiar comfort of my childhood home suddenly felt suffocating. Before I go further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and if you're hooked already, a like and subscribe will keep these stories coming. "When?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. 2 years ago. Dad couldn't meet my eyes. Right before Sarah's engagement. 2 years. I closed my eyes and let the weight of that timeline settle over me. 2 years of working 3 jobs while finishing my computer science degree. 2 years of choosing between textbooks and groceries. 2 years of believing my parents had my back while they were busy funding my sister's fairy tale. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 7 times, each note reverberating through the house like a funeral bell. I opened my eyes and looked around the room, at the family photos covering every surface, at the expensive furniture Mom had bought last spring, at the new flat-screen TV mounted above the fireplace. "Sarah needed the perfect wedding," Mom said, her voice trembling. "You know how she is about these things. And David's family has certain standards. So you stole from me to meet their standards." The words came out flat, matter of fact. I watched my parents flinch, as if I'd slapped them both. "We didn't steal," Dad protested. "We borrowed. We were going to replace it before you graduated." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "With what money, Dad? You're both retired. Where exactly was this replacement fund going to come from?" Silence stretched between us, broken only by the soft tick of the clock and the distant sound of children playing in the street outside. The late afternoon sunlight slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. "We thought you'd understand," Mom whispered. "Family helps family. Family helps family," I repeated slowly, tasting the bitter irony. "Is that what you told Sarah when you handed her my future?" Mom's face crumpled. "It wasn't like that. What was it like then?" I stood up abruptly, the sudden movement making both my parents jump. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you decided one daughter's happiness was worth more than the other's education." I walked to the window and stared out at the manicured lawn, at the rose bushes Mom tended so carefully, at the perfect suburban street where I'd grown up believing in fairness and promises kept. Everything looked exactly the same, but the world had shifted beneath my feet. "Where is Sarah now?" I asked without turning around. "Upstairs," Dad said quietly. She's resting. The pregnancy has been making her tired." My reflection stared back at me from the window glass, pale and hollow-eyed. "She's pregnant." 3 months, Mom said, and I could hear the forced brightness in her voice. "We're going to be grandparents, Kate. Isn't that wonderful?" I turned around slowly. "Does she know about the money?" The look that passed between my parents told me everything I needed to know. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. "It was her idea," Dad finally admitted, his voice barely audible. The words hit me like ice water. I felt something fundamental break inside my chest, something that had been holding me together for 28 years. "Her idea," I repeated. "She said you were brilliant," Mom rushed to explain. She said you'd find another way, that you always do. She said, family helps family, I finished. Right? Mom nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I walked back to the coffee table and picked up the ruined birthday card, the ink now completely dry and permanent. The cheerful message was obliterated, unreadable beneath the black stain. I need to go, I said. Kate, please. Dad stood up, his hands outstretched. We can fix this. We can work something out. Fix it how? I asked. Are you going to give me back the 2 years I spent eating ramen and working myself into exhaustion? Are you going to erase the panic attacks I had wondering if I'd ever be able to afford graduate school? My voice was rising now, all the careful control finally cracking. Are you going to give me back the trust one had in my own family? The sound of footsteps on the stairs made us all freeze. Sarah appeared in the doorway, one hand resting protectively on her stomach, her face glowing with that unmistakable pregnancy radiance. What's all the shouting about? She asked, then noticed my parents' tear-stained faces. What's wrong? Is everything okay? I stared at my sister, beautiful, privileged Sarah who'd never worked a day in her life, who'd married into money and comfort, who'd taken my future without a second thought. Ask them, I said, dropping the ruined card on the table. Sarah's eyes widened as she took in the scene. The broken pen, the ink-stained card, our parents' guilty expressions. Kate, wait, she started, but I was already walking toward the door. Congratulations on the baby, I said without looking back. I hope it was worth it. I stepped outside into the cooling evening air, my hands shaking as I fumbled for my car keys. Behind me, I could hear Sarah's voice rising in confusion, demanding answers from our parents. My phone buzzed before I even reached my car. A text from Mom. Please don't leave like this. We're family. I stared at the message until the screen went dark, then got in my car and drove away from the only home I'd ever known. I had no idea that 3 years later, they'd all be standing on my doorstep with their hands out and desperation in their eyes. And I had no idea that when that moment came, my answer would shatter what is left of our family forever. The rain started the moment I pulled into my apartment complex, fat drops splattering against my windshield like tears I refused to shed. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, watching the water streak down the glass, before finally forcing myself to move. My apartment felt smaller than usual when I walked in, a cramped one-bedroom with thin walls and a kitchen barely big enough for one person. The contrast to my parents' sprawling house wasn't lost on me. This was what $43,000 looked like when it disappeared from your life. I dropped my keys on the counter and stared at the stack of bills waiting there. Student loan payment, a credit card minimum, rent. The numbers that had haunted me for years, numbers that could have been so much smaller if my parents had kept their promise. My phone rang. Sarah's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. This time I turned it off. The silence in my apartment was deafening. I could hear Mrs. Chun upstairs walking around to her heels, the couple next door arguing about whose turn it was to do dishes, the constant hum of traffic from the street below. All the sounds of a life lived paycheck to paycheck, while my sister slept in her 4-bedroom house that my college fund had helped pay for. I made myself a cup of instant coffee, the cheap kind that tasted like burnt water, and sat at my tiny kitchen table. The surface was scarred from years of previous tenants, marked with ring stains and knife scratches that told stories I'd never know. 3 years. That's how long it had been since that night, and I still felt the anger, like a physical weight in my chest. After Sarah's wedding, the wedding that cost more than most people's cars, I'd cut contact. Not dramatically, not with screaming matches or ultimatums. I'd simply stopped answering calls, stopped showing up to family dinners, stopped pretending that everything was fine. My parents had tried. At first. Flowers on my birthday, with cards begging forgiveness. Invitations to holidays that went unanswered. Mom had even shown up at my apartment once, standing in the hallway with tears in her eyes, asking why I was punishing them for one mistake. One mistake. As if stealing someone's future was equivalent to forgetting to water their plants. I'd finished my degree, eventually. Took out loans that would follow me for the next decade, worked nights and weekends, graduated with honors, and a mountain of debt that should never have existed. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was now making good money as a software engineer, money that went straight to paying for an education my parents had promised to provide. Sarah had tried to reach out too, especially after the baby was born. Photos of my nephew that I deleted without looking at. Invitations to birthday parties I ignored. Text messages that started with, "I know you're angry, but..." and ended with me blocking another number. The rain was coming down harder now, drumming against my windows with increasing intensity. I could smell it through the thin walls, that clean, electric scent that usually made me feel hopeful. Tonight, it just made me feel hollow. My laptop chimed with an email notification. Work, probably. I'd been putting in 60-hour weeks lately, partly because I loved what I did, but mostly because it kept me too busy to think about the family-shaped hole in my life. But when I opened my laptop, the email wasn't from work. It was from Dad. The subject line made my stomach drop. "Emergency, please read." My finger hovered over the delete button for a long moment. 3 years of silence, and now this. I almost deleted it without reading, the way I'd deleted dozens of others. But something about the word emergency made me hesitate. I clicked it open. "Kate, I know you don't want to hear from us, and I understand why. But I'm writing because we need your help, and I don't know where else to turn. Your mother is sick. Very sick. The doctors say it's pancreatic cancer, stage 4. They're giving her 6 months, maybe less. The medical bills are overwhelming. Our insurance is fighting everything. We've already lost the house, had to sell it last month to pay for the first round of treatments. We're living in a small apartment now, and even that might not last long. Sarah and David are going through a divorce. He left her and the baby 3 months ago, and she's struggling to make ends meet. She can't help us financially. I know we don't deserve to ask you for anything after what we did. I know we broke your trust and hurt you in ways we can never undo. But your mother is dying, Kate. And despite everything, she loves you. She asks about you every day. I'm not asking you to forgive us. I'm just asking you to consider helping us through this. We need $50,000 for the experimental treatment that might give her a few more months. It's not covered by insurance. I know it's a lot. I know we have no right to ask. But you're our daughter, and we're desperate. Please think about it. Love, Dad. P.S. Your mother doesn't know I'm writing this. She made me promise not to contact you. She says she'd rather die than burden you with our problems after what we did. But I can't just watch her give up. I read the email 3 times, each word hitting me like a physical blow. Mom was dying. The house was gone. Sarah's perfect marriage had crumbled. And they needed $50,000. The irony was so sharp it cut. They'd stolen $43,000 from me to fund a wedding that had lasted less than 3 years, and now they needed even more money to save the life of the woman who'd let it happen. I closed the laptop and walked to my bedroom window. The rain was coming down in sheets now, turning the parking lot into a small lake. Lightning flickered in the distance, followed by the low rumble of thunder. My phone buzzed. I turned it back on without thinking, and now there was a text from an unknown number. Kate, it's Sarah. I got your number from your old job. Please don't block this one. I know Dad emailed you. I know you have every right to hate us. But Mom is really dying, and she won't let us ask you for help. She says she'd rather die than take anything else from you. But I can't lose her. Not like this. Please. Another text came through immediately after. I know what we did was unforgivable. I know I destroyed your trust and your future. But she's our mom, Kate. And despite everything, you're still my sister. I stared at the messages until they blurred. Outside, the storm was getting worse, wind howling around the building like something alive and angry. $50,000. I had it barely. I'd been saving for a house, putting away every extra penny for 3 years. It was supposed to be my fresh start, my chance to build something stable and permanent. It was also exactly what they needed to save Mom's life. I thought about the last time I'd seen her, 3 years ago in that perfect kitchen, tears streaming down her face as she tried to explain why they'd betrayed me. I thought about all the birthdays and holidays I'd missed, all the phone calls I'd ignored, all the bridges I'd burned in my anger. I thought about Sarah, alone with a baby, watching her world fall apart the same way mine had. And I thought about Mom, dying in some sterile hospital room, believing she deserved it because of what they'd done to me.
My phone rang.
Sarah's new number. This time, I answered. Kate. Sarah's voice was thick with tears. Oh God, I can't believe you picked up. How bad is she? I asked, cutting straight to the point. Bad. Really bad. She's lost so much weight and the pain. Sarah's voice broke. She won't even take the strong painkillers because she says we can't afford them. She's trying to die as cheaply as possible, Kate. She thinks she owes it to us after what happened. I closed my eyes. Where are you living? A 2-bedroom apartment across town. Dad's working at a hardware store, but it barely covers rent. I'm waitressing when I can find a babysitter, but with a 2-year-old. She trailed off. And David?
Gone. Completely.
He said he didn't sign up for a sick mother-in-law and a struggling wife. Took half our savings and moved in with his secretary. The bitterness in her voice was familiar. I'd heard it in my own voice for 3 years. Sarah, I said quietly, do you remember what you told Mom and Dad when they were deciding whether to use my college fund? Silence stretched between us, broken only by the sound of rain and Sarah's quiet breathing. I remember, she whispered finally. What did you say? I said. Her voice cracked. I said you were smart, that you'd figure out another way, that family helps family. And, do you still believe that? Another long pause. When Sarah spoke again, her voice was barely audible. I was selfish and stupid and cruel. I destroyed your life because I wanted a perfect wedding, and I've regretted it every single day since David left. I know you'll never forgive me. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But Mom doesn't deserve to die for my mistakes. I walked back to my laptop and stared at Dad's email. $50,000. My entire future, again. Kate. Sarah's voice was small, hopeful. Are you still there? I'm here, I said. Will you at least think about it? I looked around my small apartment, at the life I'd built from nothing after they'd taken everything. I thought about the house I'd been saving for, the security I'd been working toward, the future I'd been planning. And I thought about Mom, dying alone because she was too ashamed to ask for help. I'll think about it, I said and hung up. But even as I said the words, I knew I'd already made my decision. The question wasn't whether I'd help them. The question was what I'd demand in return. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating my reflection in the window. For just a moment, I looked like a stranger to myself, someone harder, colder, more calculating than the girl who'd walked out of my parents' house 3 years ago. Maybe that's exactly who I needed to be. I opened my laptop and started typing a response to Dad's email. But this wouldn't be the answer they were expecting. This would be the answer that changed everything. I stood on my parents' doorstep at exactly 9 a.m., a manila envelope clutched in my hand and 3 years of silence weighing on my shoulders. The apartment complex was nothing like the house I'd grown up in, a tired building with peeling paint and a parking lot full of dented cars. Dad answered the door, and I barely recognized him. He'd aged a decade in 3 years, his hair gone completely gray, his shoulders stooped like he was carrying an invisible weight. When he saw me, his face crumpled with relief and something that looked like fear. "Kate," he whispered. "You came?" I said I would. He stepped aside to let me in, and the smell hit me immediately. Antiseptic and medicine and something else, something sweet and cloying that I recognized as the scent of illness. The apartment was tiny, maybe a quarter the size of their old house, with thin walls and carpet that had seen better decades. "She's in the bedroom," Dad said quietly. "She doesn't know you're coming." I thought it might be too much of a shock if I told her. I nodded and followed him down a narrow hallway lined with family photos, the same ones that used to hang in their old house, now crowded together on cheap walls like refugees from a better life. Mom was propped up in a hospital bed that dominated the small bedroom, and 4 poles standing beside her like a mechanical guardian. She was reading a paperback novel, and when she looked up and saw me, the book fell from her hands. "Kate." Her voice was paper-thin, barely a whisper. "Is that really you?" She looked so small in that bed, so fragile. The woman who'd raised me, who taught me to ride a bike and helped me with homework and promised me a future she'd later steal, she was disappearing before my eyes. "Hi, Mom," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I felt. Tears started streaming down her face immediately. "I told your father not to call you. I told him we had no right." "He didn't call me," I said, moving closer to the bed. "He emailed. And you're right, you have no right to ask me for anything. But I'm here anyway." She reached out with a trembling hand, then stopped herself. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry for what we did to you. I know you can never forgive us, and I don't blame you. I've missed you so much." The raw pain in her voice almost broke my resolve. Almost. "Where's Sarah?" I asked. "At work," Dad said from the doorway. "She's pulling a double shift at the diner. She'll be back tonight." I nodded and pulled a chair up to Mom's bedside. Dad told me about the experimental treatment. $50,000. Mom's face went pale.
Kate, no.
"We're not asking you for money. We would never." "But you need it," I said simply. "To live." "Not at your expense," she whispered. "Never again at your expense." I opened the manila envelope and pulled out a cashier's check. Mom's eyes widened when she saw the amount. $50,000, exactly what they needed. "Kate," Dad breathed. "I can't believe. How did you?" "I've been saving," I said. "For a house. For my future. The future you took from me once before." Mom was crying harder now, her thin shoulders shaking. "We can't take this from you. We can't take your future again." "You're not taking it," I said, my voice calm and controlled. "I'm giving it to you. But there are conditions." The room went silent except for the soft beeping of Mom's monitors and the distant sound of traffic outside. "What conditions?" Dad asked, though his voice suggested he was afraid to know. I pulled out a second document from the envelope, a contract I'd spent all night writing and having notarized. "First," I said, reading from the paper, "Sarah will publicly acknowledge what she did. She'll write a letter to everyone who attended her wedding, explaining that the money came from my college fund without my knowledge or consent. She'll post it on social media, send it to her friends, make sure everyone knows the truth." Dad's face went white. "Kate, that would humiliate her. The way I was humiliated when I had to explain to my professors why I couldn't afford textbooks. The way I was humiliated when I had to work 3 jobs while my classmates focused on their studies." Mom reached for my hand, her fingers cold and weak. "Sweetheart, please." "Second," I continued, "you'll both write letters of apology to be read at family gatherings for the next 5 years. Every Christmas, every birthday, every holiday, you'll stand up and acknowledge what you did to me and how it affected my life." "Kate," Dad said quietly, "we'll do anything you want, but—" "Third," I said, my voice getting stronger, "Sarah will pay me back. Not the $50,000 I'm giving you now, the original $43,000 you stole from me, plus interest. She'll pay me $500 a month for the next 10 years. She's a single mother working as a waitress," Dad protested. "She can barely afford rent." "Then she'll work harder," I said coldly. "The way I had to work harder when you took my money." Mom was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. "Kate, this isn't you. This isn't the daughter we raised." "The daughter you raised trusted her family," I snapped, my composure finally cracking. "The daughter you raised believed in promises and fairness and doing the right thing. That daughter died 3 years ago when you chose Sarah's happiness over my future." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat, could smell the antiseptic and fear and regret that filled the small room. "And if we don't agree to these terms?" Dad asked quietly. I stood up and put the check back in the envelope. "Then you don't get the money. Mom dies, And you live with the knowledge that your pride was more important than her life. Mom made us sound like a wounded animal. Kate, please. Don't do this. Don't become someone cruel because of what we did. I'm not being cruel, I said, though the words felt like glass in my throat. I'm being fair. You took my future once. Now I'm offering to save your life, but at a price. The same way you made me pay a price for Sarah's happiness. Dad was crying now, silent tears streaming down his weathered face. We'll do it, he whispered. Whatever you want, we'll do it. All of it, I asked. The public apology, the letters, the payments? All of it. I looked at Mom, who was staring at the ceiling, tears pooling in her eyes. Mom, if it means you'll forgive us someday, she whispered, then yes. All of it. I placed the check on her bedside table, along with the contract. Sign this, and the money is yours. The treatment can start immediately. Dad picked up the contract with shaking hands, reading through the terms I'd spent all night crafting. Each condition designed to extract the maximum amount of accountability and humiliation from the family that had betrayed me. There's one more thing, I said as he reached for a pen. They both looked at me, hope and fear warring in their eyes. I want to be there when Sarah reads her apology letter. I want to see her face when she has to admit to everyone what she did. Dad's hand froze over the paper. Kate, those are my terms, I said. Take them or leave them. He signed the contract. Mom signed it too, her signature barely legible with her trembling hands. I picked up the documents and headed for the door, then stopped and turned back. The treatment starts Monday, I said. Sarah's apology goes out by Friday. And Dad? Make sure she understands that if she misses even one payment, if she tries to weasel out of any part of this agreement, the deal is off. I'll take you to court for the money, and I'll make sure everyone knows exactly why. I walked out of that apartment feeling like a stranger to myself. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back at me was harder than the girl who'd walked out of my parents' house 3 years ago. Colder, more calculating. But she was also someone who'd learned that sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes trust, once broken, can only be rebuilt through consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Dad told me you're helping with Mom's treatment.
Thank you.
I know I don't deserve your kindness. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. It's not kindness. Check your email tonight. You'll understand. 3 days later, Sarah's apology letter went viral on social media. The local newspaper picked it up. Her former friends shared it with comments ranging from shock to disgust to grudging respect for her honesty. She called me crying, begging me to let her take it down. I said no. Mom's treatment started the following Monday. The experimental therapy was brutal, but it worked. 6 months later, she was in remission. A year later, she was declared cancer-free. Sarah made her first payment on schedule, $500 that I knew represented a significant portion of her monthly income. She made the second payment too, and the third. The family letters of apology became a tradition at every gathering I attended. Awkward, painful reminders of what they'd done and what it had cost all of us. But something strange happened over those months of forced accountability. Slowly, gradually, the anger that had consumed me for 3 years began to fade. Not because I'd forgiven them, forgiveness felt too simple, too easy for what they'd done. But because I'd finally gotten something I'd needed more than forgiveness: justice. 2 years later, I bought my house, a smaller one than I'd originally planned, but mine nonetheless. Sarah had paid back nearly $12,000 by then, and Mom was healthy and working part-time at a local charity. Dad sent me a photo of Mom at her first charity event, smiling and vibrant and alive. The caption read, "She says she owes you her life. We all do." I stared at that photo for a long time, remembering the broken woman in the hospital bed who'd been too ashamed to ask for help. Remembering the choice I'd made to save her, even at the cost of becoming someone I wasn't sure I recognized. The truth was, I'd gotten my revenge. I'd made them pay for what they'd done, extracted every ounce of accountability and humiliation I could manage. I'd proven that actions have consequences, that trust once broken requires more than words to rebuild. But in the end, the person who'd changed the most wasn't them. It was me. And I still wasn't sure if that change had been worth the price we'd all paid for it.
My phone rang.
Sarah's name on the screen. For the first time in 5 years, I answered on the first ring. Kate. Her voice was different now, steadier, more mature. I just wanted to tell you that I made the payment early this month. And I wanted to thank you. Thank me for saving Mom's life, for holding us accountable, for teaching me that actions have consequences.
She paused.
I know you probably still hate me, and I understand why. But I'm a better person now because of what you made me face. My son will grow up with a mother who understands the value of promises kept and trust earned. I looked out my kitchen window at the garden I'd been planting, small but growing, like the tentative hope I'd been nurturing that maybe, someday, we could find our way back to being a family again. I don't hate you, Sarah, I said quietly. I never did. I just needed you to understand what you'd taken from me. I do understand now, she whispered. And I'm sorry. Not just for what we did, but for who we forced you to become to get justice for it. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and thought about the girl I'd been before that night 3 years ago, trusting, optimistic, believing in the fundamental goodness of the people who loved her. That girl was gone, replaced by someone harder and more pragmatic. Someone who understood that love without accountability was just enabling. Someone who'd learned that sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who need the strongest boundaries. I wasn't sure if I missed that naive girl or if I was grateful for the woman I'd become. But I knew one thing for certain. My answer had changed everything, just like I'd promised it would. The question now was whether we could build something new from the ashes of what we'd been. Only time would tell. But for the first time in 5 years, I thought we might actually have a chance.